the Adelaide Football Club a little bit here for actually wanting to get their ducks in a row first to, one, acquiring all the information, two, speaking to Tyson himself, his manager, three, the South Australian Police, the other parties involved, and then working through the logistics of the situation, which is then obviously, okay, well, we have to hand you some sort of punishment, and it's not like we can get everyone to the football club to sit down and discuss. You're probably doing these things through teleconferences and trying to speak to board members and coaches and leadership groups to come out with, what they believe is the adequate fine for that situation. But yeah, look, I don't think you can be too tough on Adelaide really for not releasing that information straight away. I mean, we're not playing football at the moment. We, the COVID-19 situation is a much bigger beast and deal at the moment than I guess playing football really is. And, but the other side of the thing too is, perhaps there's a little bit more going on potentially with the player than what we've been, told. But also the flip side of that too is that, sometimes the clubs are quite transparent with media as a goodwill and say, well, a player might be having a few issues, or there might be things going on, and we're going to tell you this in goodwill because we're going to be transparent with you, but we also expect you not to make that very private information public. So that is, in a sense, the way that the clubs and the media work together to sort of foster a kind of a mutual ground to find out what the information is, how we report that, how we get that out, and two, a level of comfortability for the club where they have that trust within the media to actually push out the story, which, is what it is, the DUI, driving an unregistered vehicle, and then, the footy fans will have their say and, some media, you'll get Media Street that'll get onto it, and it is what it is. But look, I really don't think in this current set of circumstances in the environment that there should be too much sort of, stick given to the Adelaide Footy Club for kind of not withholding it, but probably taking their time a little bit to get that out.
I half agree with you, Paige, but, in a normal situation, I'd say yes, but the Adelaide Football Club and the media don't have the greatest of histories over the last couple of years. Particularly the Victorian media and Kane Corns, they've had great delight in bashing the Adelaide Football Club and the media, and I don't believe that exists with the Adelaide Football Club and the media in general. And the proof of the pudding in that is that Adelaide took 6 days after. Tyson Stengel himself took 2 days before he told the club. Then the club from there on in after that took 6 days before they released it to the media. And then, one of the articles I read about it talked about Tyson Stengel and his offences, but then slammed the club for the 6-day delay, and then went on to the rest of the article, brought up the camp again, that infamous camp at the 2018 camp, and it carried on about that for the rest of the article. So, given the history of the Adelaide Football Club and it's also been discussed on radio as well, they've pointed out the two common factors, of course, Fagan and Chapman. They're still there. And
I can say that, I think, street though, isn't it? I guess media are always hungry for clubs to be transparent. Clubs, also, whilst they want to share information, have been burnt by media in the past. That's not just related to the Adelaide Football Club. That is all 18 clubs in the football league who have all at one stage have been burnt by media to a degree on information. That's, I will say, I think Victorian media do have a tendency when it comes to the Adelaide Football Club. Yes, I think I can say this from a media point of view, I can say this as a football fan point of view, is that I don't people there that were involved in it. Thirdly, you had there were quite a lot of players who departed the club within, a 12 to 20. And then you have, and then it doesn't help that you've got these players make these parting whacks, if you will, and cite things about that. And, and it drags up old history. And, of course, the media would be remiss not to actually report on that. So if you have player X that says, well, I've left because I didn't agree with what happened here, that instantly becomes a big story. And that's something that media will keep. They're like a dog with a bone. They want to know more. They want to know more. They want to know more. But you've only given me you've given me half of something to go off. Now I'm asking for more, but now you're actually reveal, well, what was so upsetting about it? There is always going to be a story. Then you've got Twitter. Then you've got talkback radio. Then you've got forums. You've got people speculating. You've got, my friend of a friend who knows player X that played at Adelaide during this period told me this. And all of a sudden you have a lot of speculation swirling, and Melbourne is a cesspool for that. And you're always going to hear rumours, and it's hard to separate rumour from fact. The issue is that when you talk about sort of the Adelaide Football Club getting whacked by the Victorian media, is that I guess the Victorian media are like, well, we've heard this and you're not confirming either way if this is true or not. So are we going to get some transparency from you? We're going to get some truth, and we're going to say, right, someone here is going to saddle up and go, all right, well, here's actually what happened. But then, you've got players coming out saying one thing. You've got former players saying another. And, it's a merry-go-round. It's a constant merry-go-round. So the problem is that for the Victorian media particularly, because we are never going to know everything that happened there. We're going to know bits and pieces, and bits and pieces will continue to emerge because players or former, administration or people that were involved during that period perhaps will let things come out or slide, but they'll get to a point where they realise, I'm actually not going to say anything more from here, because then it becomes, left a sour taste in my mouth. So I guess you have to take into a number of factors there in terms of how that might look for, whoever is involved. But yeah, it's weird. I guess probably getting back to the point that you made that, we're reporting on the incident with Tyson Stengel. It then trails off to talk about the infamous camp, and then it comes back to Tyson Stengel again. It doesn't seem fair, I suppose, in that incident, because Tyson wasn't at the football club during that period.
Correct.
And it's like, but at the same time, it's something that will still linger, and it will still be put out there until a bit more comes out.
I think, Paige, the relevant point here is, with regards to the camp, is actually how Adelaide have treated this in terms of their priorities. And I think you mentioned earlier that, some of the Crows or ex-Crows players have given a bit of a whack on the way out and probably fed a few things to certain media people, etc. And I think one of the complaints that arose out of the review that was conducted by Dunstall and Pavlik and co. Was that the players probably felt a little bit disenfranchised by the club and a little bit, hung out to dry and put through that camp and blah, blah, blah. And I think maybe this is an example of the Crows actually having their ducks in a row correctly and looking after the players' welfare first, making sure he's all right, making sure those that are involved are in right, his family, etc., etc. Then getting the leadership involved in terms of, assessing the situation and dishing out a punishment if required. And then after all that's been sorted, then go to the media with a statement, which they've done today, which builds on what they released on Friday, basically saying that Stengel's been given a $2.5 fine, he's going to, miss 4 games, etc., etc. And to me, if you look at it from the other side of the coin, they've actually looked after Stengel very well, in my opinion. And I think that would, from a player's perspective, if you're talking about rebuilding a culture at the Adelaide Footy Club and making it a place where players want to be, I think that was probably foremost in their mind.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's, I guess that, the one thing is that football fans will always want to demand, they want to know everything and they want to know it yesterday. Yeah. And, we live in a world where news and media is 24/7. You know, you've got social media, and that just rings throughout. And I guess that's probably why I don't really have a major issue to a degree with this taking its time getting out. If you talk again, you go back to the fact that, okay, well, there were players that were unhappy with how things turned out with that camp. And the feedback has been, well, the players want more security from the football club. They want their welfare considered. They want their feelings considered. All these things are relevant. And based off that, if, you know, you've got an incident like this, and, you know, we're not talking about, you know, him going and, you know, the Lockie Hunter incident is, you know, probably a bit more full on given the damage he's caused to other vehicles and property. But, you know, I haven't got an issue. If Adelaide want to get all the facts right and they want to get all the information, they want to collect all that, take their time. And again, you have to allow almost that, what you call postage time, right? Of speaking to the relevant parties, the board, the exec, the coaches, the leadership group, people who might have known, you know, what was happening that night, why it happened, so they can get all the information correctly the first time and go, you know what, here's exactly what happened. There's no secrets here. We're giving you everything. We've taken our time to get it out to you. And if you're going to grill us for that, well, then so be it. But that's been our decision, and we're not going to be criticised for it.
The only problem with that, of course, is the 6-day factor. And, you know, I always think the best way to beat the media, defuse the media, is to beat them to it. And I think that they were right in dealing with Tyson Stengel first. And then I think after that, I would have released a statement that this had occurred, and that they would release more details later, and then talk to the players, and then et cetera, et cetera. But I think that the 6-day gap is just too long. It really is too long. And although they're not trying to hide something, it gives the media that opportunity to say it appears that they are.
I think Paige and Feen, no disrespect, Macca, but I think Paige and Feen, you make really, really excellent points that dovetail nicely into each other, and that is that with the camp, there was no, and I don't think any of us would disagree, that we were, to a large extent, the authors of our own misfortune, particularly in the early days when we were, you know, fronting the media and trying to cover the whole thing up. And it just, you know, in hindsight, it looked very much as when we look at what unravelled subsequent to that, seems very much now that there was a real breakdown between what the players thought about all of that and how we represented to the media. So I think your 2 points dovetail well in the so far as, Paige, you're right, that, you know, we were the author of our own misfortune. And then, Feen, I think you're absolutely spot on with the Stengel thing, that there was a lot more, it was a lot more player welfare driven, and a lot more, I guess, interaction with the player and probably some of the senior players as well, to make sure that when we did actually front the media, that we were, you know, going there with everybody on board, which was completely, which even though, you know, the punchline was that we hadn't learnt from the experience of the camp, I think it probably, what it does show on closer analysis, is that we learnt a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it was lazy journalism to pay Stengel's bloody rego, because how can he be driving an unregistered car? He's on $100,000 a year. Was that Burton's last contribution to the club, that he forgot to pay all the regos?
Well, you have to remember, Fleet, I blame Burton for everything, so you're obviously along.
I found that a little bit unusual. Just quickly moving on to the Lockie Hunter one, he's obviously fallen on his sword under a bit of pressure and given up the vice captaincy at the Bulldogs, and obviously that was a little bit heavier an incident in terms of damage, and also getting his young teammate involved. But again, I've had a big problem with your now, Paige, before we continue, how committed are you to your new music career? Do you have any designs at all of getting back into media?
Oh, look! You know, getting back into the AFL media is my number one priority.
Oh, so you can't trash Tom Morris and those blokes.
Very good. Tom is a very good operator. He's a very fine operator.
I noticed you said operator instead of journalist, so that's probably fair. But Morris and Morrison.
He gives as good as he gets, that's for sure.
Oh shit, he's been giving me the shits on Twitter, and so is Tom Brown. Bloody, we should know the full story, and why did Lachie Hunter choose to release a video statement instead of fronting the media? Blah blah blah. Whatever. Tom Brown put on Twitter what he would have asked Lachie Hunter if he'd had him fronting up to a press conference, and it was all the information we already knew and the stuff that we were never going to get told anyway. Lachie Hunter's not going to say why he was pissed on that night and why he stuffed up. I mean, it's just unrealistic. It's just muckraking.
I don't mind. It's probably one of those things that at the end of the day, footballers are paid a lot of money to adhere to a certain set of rules. They are, property of the club, of the media, of fans, like they are just watched from all angles. And I suppose the part and parcel of that is that, you can enjoy the big side of that, which is the money, the fame, all of that sort of stuff. But then, when you do stuff up, there is an expectation that you do front the media, that you do talk to, these questions and kind of cop your whack. And that's sort of been the frame since the dawn of time. Before I was, at Fox Footy, a lot of people would know me as a Collingwood supporter, and during the Rat Pack.
Sorry, just breaking up there, Paige. What did you say, Collingwood? Sorry, what?
Yeah, one of those. All my teeth as well. But you fully expect if a player's going to stuff up the way they have, you want them to front the media because there's questions they should be asked and they should be put on the spot, and that just goes part and parcel with the fortunate position they find themselves in as an AFL footballer. And again, you can you forgive that a little bit because of the situation we're in? Well, yeah, of course you almost have to be a little bit lenient given the environment, but again, I think that the Lachie Hunter issue, when I actually saw that bob up, it kind of reminded me of Alan Didak back in, the early sort of 2010s sort of situation where
very similar.
It hit me straight away, and I thought, oh, you're kidding. This is like Groundhog Day in a sense that, there was this incident, and then all of a sudden this came out, and you've got two other players connected to it, and all of a sudden he wasn't around to be breathalyzed because he's left the scene. And so we're not going to know just how, under the influence he was. We know that he was impaired by it. We don't know to what degree. Again, I think it just comes down to, where I fully agree with Tom Morris is that, yeah, you know what, this is a big bungle, and you really do deserve to sort of, cop it sweet between the eyes, answer the questions. In saying that, he's also been shamed by the public as well. This is everywhere. And given that there's no football being played, there's nothing for it to be hid behind either. So it's the biggest story at the moment. But I do believe that he should have, fronted the media and, and then the flip side of that is, well, we're talking about social distancing. We can't, do all these things, blah, blah, blah. The video that he put out is, suffice enough. Is it? Who knows? It's debatable. Again, we're not ever going to see, everyone's always going to agree on the same thing. But, the Hunter issue is of concern because, again, you compare the two situations. We've had Adelaide that have actually been really quite transparent, clear, got their information together, provided that, perhaps not timely, but still provided it all together. The Western Bulldogs issue, it's just come out in drips and drabs.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bode well for the football club, which has, had a pretty tidy history, to be honest.
Well, they got a lawyer for a GM, so, Now, Paige.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought this is a really good segue just to segue into your other stuff, and I think you can probably hear what I'm playing at the moment, can you?
I can too.
Now, Paige, in her sabbatical from reporter duties, is an artist, and this has only been out for a week on YouTube. Paige, is that right?
Yeah, it's a week old today.
Week old.
Very fresh.
And it's called Alibi, which I thought was very appropriate given the circumstances around Lachie Hunter. So I've put a link in the chat, and I'll put a link on all our socials afterwards. But just
Very kind of you, thank you.
let's just listen to this just for a second. Now, Paige, we will just digress just for a little bit and have a chat about your current endeavours. What's the deal with the music? And I thought I thought you were a hip hop artist. What's this R&B stuff going on?
Look, it's the art. Well, the artistry is sort of, I've since I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. I've been playing guitar most of my life, and been sort of throughout my teenage, early adult sort of life, I've been, in and out of bands and sort of acoustics and bits and pieces, and, put it all down for a while. And probably over the course of the last 12 to 18 months, I've just sort of, started back up again, but in a different genre altogether. And I've sort of under that hip hop R&B sort of umbrella, and it's just a bit of a hobby, really. It's a good little outlet, when for so long you're in, what footy media is like. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's a nice little outlet to sort of pour into and have fun. And I write all my own beats and lyrics and produce everything myself and put it all out. And it's a bit of a process, but it's a rewarding one. It's a bit of fun. So it is what it is.
Paige, the collective age, or the average age of your co-panelists here is about, maybe 85. Pete and I are in our 30s, but Macca's about 110.
Yeah, he's up the average, has he?
Yeah.
I'm up the wisdom anyway. Yeah.
But Macca, you'd be all across hip hop and the latest music trends, yeah?
I don't like hip hop that much, but I do like. I like rhythm and blues. I really am. I'm an old rocker from way back, and I really love rock. Queen and all that sort of stuff.
I have to say, guys, did I tell you that I was doing the under-16s for Norwood this year? I was team before it all got called off. I was team managing the development squad, and when we used to play. And if there was a bit of music in the change rooms, back in the day, it'd be a bit of AC/DC or
good stuff.
And these before games, I'd go to the rooms, and these
good stuff, Macca.
These kids, it would be all like your N-word, rape my sister, blah blah. And it's just this sort of like, it's pretty sort of low key, but all this sort of really unbelievable. And I said to the coach, do we have to turn that shit down? Are we going to get sued by somebody here? I just couldn't believe what they play to get themselves pumped up for the game. It's all gangster rap.
A lot of Kendrick Lamar, Drake, Post Malone kind of stuff at the moment. It's just I think sort of that hip hop and rap particularly is more. It's probably more accessible now. Put it that way. That's probably why. That younger sort of, you're talking that 12 to sort of 18 age group. It's so accessible. It's obviously it's
Macca's great grandchildren.
That's for sure.
I'm not really a hip hop fan, but
I was astonished. I was just because I'm thinking, how does that pump you up for a game? More like it just sort of gets you, lying around, smoking a joint or something like that.
Smoking a joint? How 60s do you want to get, Pete? Jesus, smoking a joint.
Well, yeah, not really the go to Sandford Club, I know, but yeah. Anyway, I was quite amazed that this was what was coming out of there. These were the tunes that were coming out just before the game.
Yeah, when I was playing footy, there was still like some of the music. I'd just be like, what is going on here? But I suppose even I was playing football even sort of last season, and all the girls, we'd have a habit of actually putting back on really bad 90s songs before games, and
there's a lot of good 90s
first couple,
songs
it's
though.
funny, and not when it gets to ooh ooh ah sexy you just think, nah,
What the hell?
I'm not on today.
Now listen, though, my favourite ever cover page does mesh your genre and the 90s, because my favourite cover is that thing that Denzel Curry did to
Bulls on
Rage Against.
Parade.
Oh my God, that was good. That's my
He's
favourite
fantastic.
cover ever. So that was a bit of a mesh between good old 90s metal and the current stuff. So anyway,
He's a very good artist, Denzel Curry.
Oh my God, it actually made me do a little bit of research and listen to some of his other stuff. He's pretty good, and I hope he keeps doing that mash between metal and hip hop, because he's got the voice for it. He just absolutely
He's the only
killed
one
that.
out there that does it. Actually, he's as someone that's grown up in a sort of a very rock and roll, 80s, 90s, grunge metal sort of household with older brothers and my parents and stuff. He pays homage to it very well, and that's what he grew up with too. So the fact that he can merge both is very, very, very talented.
Just smashed it.
Congratulations, though, Paige, just on, your music sounds fantastic, and it's great that, that's just, for that to just be a hobby is quite amazing, because, the likes of Macca would, do a crossword or something like that as a hobby, but to put that out as a hobby is...
I was actually in the Australian Boys Choir, mate.
Oh my God.
Well, here we go.
I was.
What were you
congratulations on
were
that.
you the organist,
Appreciate
Macca?
it, thank you.
No, I was, and then my voice broke and I turned into a frog. That's the way it goes.
I just thought you'd be sitting there playing your organ, that's all. Well,
No, I'm a rocker. I only play rock music.
Right, Christ, okay. Anyway, look, Paige, the other thing that you mentioned just there, which I thought I'd briefly touch on, is your footy career. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, wow. I don't even know where to start.
We're all could-have-beens here, so you've got one up on us, I think.
Yeah.
It's been a bit of a journey, actually. I think probably like a lot of girls my age, you get to that sort of age of 12 and that's your cutoff. What was for me back then anyway. Now you're able to start from under 8s or 9s or something now for girls. But yeah, my dad played at a pretty good level here in Victoria when he was quite younger, and then so for him, when I came along, it was all footy. And so I played until I was about 12. Couldn't play any longer. Had to switch sports, for my teen years. And then as soon as I turned 18, I grew up down Geelong way and then moved up to the Big Smoke in Melbourne. And I started playing with the Darebin Falcons under Peter Searle, who coaches the St Kilda women's team. And was very fortunate that I arrived there almost a naive, fresh-faced 18-year-old. And basically from there, we won about during my time there. So, I played along the likes of, Daisy Pearce, Kaz Paxman, Mel Hickey, Katie Brennan, Darcy Vesio, Jess Dalpos. We had a phenomenal team, in that era. And, I was very fortunate enough to have some, great team success and, individual success, and was lucky enough to represent Victoria. So that was quite a long journey, and I've hung up the boots now because, I'm turning 32 and I thought that's enough for me. And, it's time to focus on the career side of things and so that's all done and dusted. But yeah, I've got phenomenal memories playing footy, and very fortunate to have played for Darebin, such a great football club that's churned out, the most AFLW players in the competition. And great memories, and you never get sick of winning premierships, that's for sure.
So with the male footy, Paige, sorry, Mac, just for a sec. With the male footy, it doesn't matter what level you play. You always sort of have that affinity with your teammates, and you could bump into them in the street 10 years later, and the goals get longer and the marks get higher and the wins get better and all the rest of it. Is it the same for people who have played in the women's league in terms of that camaraderie and that sort of that mateship?
Oh yeah, if anything, look, it's hard to really explain because the way the AFLW has evolved, it's come from from so far back. And in Victoria, the VWFL, which was the strongest comp in the country, we had only about, I think it was between 8 and 10 teams each season, and the teams were just absolutely layered with talent. It was the teams, and the structure of the league was just incredibly strong. So, you didn't really have lots of blowouts, and it's incredible to think that some of the girls that were starting on our bench, you almost had a bit of a giggle at, because you just thought, how is that a thing? Girls would be stuck playing in the reserves that'd be starting 18 at another football club, but stayed with Darabin because of the culture and sort of like the camaraderie basically there. But I think it's even more important, I guess, for us women to really be to keep those sort of memories and that old league before it turned into the VFL alive, because based off the VWFL, that's what the AFLW became. That sounds, now that I say that out loud, that must sound very horribly Victorian biased to you South Australian gentlemen.
It does, yeah. And you're starting to break up again.
Not much different to the men. Not much different how the men's competition evolved. Really,
come on, you're most rusted on football people know how high of a quality the Sandful was and still is. But it's quite incredible to think that we were so fortunate to be the blueprint for what the AFLW became, and because it was, it was so strong, I guess those memories, they stick around like they almost happened yesterday. And, looking now at where all the girls have gone and, where they're plying their trade, and, one of my best mates, Stephanie Chochi, is the captain of Collingwood. And, I used to room with her when we played Victoria, and our other roommate was Penny Cooler-Reid, who played for Collingwood as well, and then, coached the Collingwood VFL team.
God, imagine that room,
season.
Pete. 3 Collingwood players in the same room. Bloody hell.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty rowdy times. But, it's I think no matter what level of footy you play at, I think you just love and appreciate the people behind you that support you. The people that come to help out each week, even the people, your friends and family that run water for you, the people that volunteer their time, the ring-ins that have to run the boundary or be on the, goal duty or timers and all that sort of stuff. I think, when you're playing grassroots, it's community, it's, when you do, have those wins, they're great, but when you experience premierships, they're even better.
Yeah.
And I think, they're not as glamorous as, your big AFLW premierships or anything like that. But, I mean, we're lucky we made history, and, I'm very fortunate to be part of that. So,
that's all I was going to congratulate you on that, and just ask you what position you played in.
Yeah. So, when I started, I probably thought I could do everything, and realised
we all do, yeah.
very quickly realised I was coming into the strongest team in the competition, and so I'd basically be told where to play. I played mostly off a forward flank, and I had rotation minutes through the mid. But, when you've got a phenomenal midfield of, who we had, it's pretty hard to get extra minutes. So I played sort of a forward flank, had to share basically, sort of key key forward roles with Mo Hope, which was always a battle. And her and I were we were housemates, so we used to live together, and so that was always quite interesting, seeing who'd kick more on the weekend. But so I played mostly as a forward flanker. Would go deep, play at full forward or centre half, and then funnily enough, when I played Victoria, I'd actually play as a rebounding defender. So and then during the rest of my sort of career with Darebin, I sort of played mostly as a utility. So I'd go the sort of half-back flank, forward flank. I'd have rotation minutes through the midfield. If I was mouthing off, I'd spend a few minutes on the bench. That was pretty good at that. But,
I love mouthing off. It's part of the game, isn't it?
Didn't mind the lip. A lot of girls don't. A lot of girls don't engage in it. But having grown up so engrossed in football with, dad, brothers, playing against the boys, and just sort of having football be all-consuming on the weekend. And I'm not just talking about watching, Collingwood games. I would watch every game I could possibly watch, and basically mimicking, players and commentators. So I'd get out and absolutely, get on the lip very quickly in the game. Not even potentially realising what I was saying or doing or how that was going to affect things. But I was definitely a sledger when I played, and I loved that. I loved that side of the game. A lot of girls didn't. They don't like to do it.
Paige, we've got a question from one of our people that jump on our live chat, just asking what your favourite footy moment. I'm not sure whether that's going to be as a supporter or a player, but we'll assume player.
Look, as a player, probably my favourite footy moment was definitely. Look, premierships are always special, but I suppose my dad played for Victoria when he was a younger man, and my first year at Darebin, I was very much a rat bag, and I had potential, but I wasn't applying myself. And Peter Searle sort of read me the riot act, and really sort of ripped into me and said, "Look, you put yourself in a good position to get to Victorian trials, and you'll get yourself picked, but you've got to be fit and you've got to want it." And she really, really rode me for, a good solid 3 months on the track. And, getting my first Victorian jumper is without a doubt the sweetest sort of moment for me.
That would have been a good moment.
That was, and for the family, it was great. The only other time I've seen my dad tear up was when Collingwood won the flag in 2010. So that was a nice football moment.
No, we teared up too, but for a different reason.
Fane, she's just breaking up again, Fane.
This connection's getting really dodgy.
Pass with this rubbish, but definitely getting my first Victorian jumper was just. It's probably my most prized possession as well. Is that first one you never forget, and I wouldn't have been able to get there without Peter's,
pushing along.
Just her ability to drill me.
J-Mac on the chat asks Paige, what do you reckon the best sledge was that you've ever delivered? And can you repeat it, or do we have to just?
They're always hard because a lot of them you can't repeat, can you?
No.
Look, there's probably a lot that that you. I guess, what are we governed by on? You
were here at the start when we were, barely getting the treadmill running, so there's no limitations here.
In the AFL dub, I won't name names, but she's very good. She's a very handy player, and she played for Diamond Creek, and Diamond Creek and Darebin were big rivals. And
just googling. Well, keep going.
And I in one particular afternoon, and we
beautiful.
And And I
That's what Macca's wife says to him every night too.
happen to know her ex-girlfriend well, and that information had been made available to me. And I thought, well,
Oh, so it was factual. There was you.
and,
I really love it.
There'd been a few, but you know, I give as good as I take. There's talk about, but you know, that's
For another
that one
time.
sticks out. That's for another time, absolutely.
Let me just do my best, mate, and I'll keep it polite, as polite as I can. One of the guys I've been sort of jostling with all day came out with that's what I love about
Have a
that
laugh
one.
as well. I've had a
Yeah,
couple
it
of
was,
those moments on the cricket field where you hear a couple of sniggers in the slips and you think, yeah, that
Yep.
actually worked.
When it lands well.
Yeah.
It was. I sort of took the shine off her goal, and I think even her teammates and sort of mine, and you know, the runner was out, and just I remember him shaking his head at me and going, oh, "Jesus Christ!" Like,
in your sledge. It was completely above board. It was cricket actually, and I was batting. And anyone that knew that me playing cricket, I never ever play a cut shot. Right, it's just one shot that I never ever stay. You know, I never. 50 you've made there. He said, but again, no cut shot, so it's not really a great innings, is it? You know, and of course, it to do was play a cut shot just to shut this guy up, and was obviously caught in gully.
That
Took the catch, no,
Yeah.
but anyway.
Yeah,
I
never
think
mind.
the sledging is definitely one of the, you know, females don't necessarily take to it very. They hold grudges, and they don't forget, and they're feeling, you know, pick and choose. But it certainly meant that, you know, I was a bit of a target.
There are certain topics, Paige, that we don't discuss on this podcast. We often have one of our regular panelists is Nikki, who it's a shame actually she wasn't on tonight, but we've learnt that one of the topics we don't discuss is women's feelings. So we won't talk about that. We'll just move on.
I was going to say more things.
You don't consider them, just bloody hell. So, jeez. Paige, so you mentioned that you want to get back into the media. Just give us a bit of, can you just give us a, and we're sort of heading up to closing time, but I don't mind going over because this is a good chat. Like, you want to get back into the media. What?
Football clubs are structured. You could, you know, that there's somebody employed for basically anything and through thick and fast. I think the writing really sort of became on the wall, and that was more to the sense that look at it in the way that, you know, football was structured, you know, really in the 90s even, I mean, before that it was skeleton. In the 90s it was probably, you know, they had really started to build up in terms of what a footy club looks like and all the people involved. And I think it's probably headed back that way potentially, is that, you know, we're not going to have all of these people employed by footy clubs, and we're not going to have all this, you know, we're used to seeing, you know, a head
The big
coach,
entourage. Yeah.
you know, 4 line coaches, 4 development. You're talking about, you know, these multi-million-dollar industries that, you know, rely to, you know, at the moment, because it's hard to explain, but in a sense, it's basically say, well, how much can we produce by getting by with as little as possible?
Yeah.
And, you know, if it meant that we had 10 journos, can, you know, have been affected by on the bottom line, obviously by, you know, no income coming in, you know, through their revenue streams of, you know, sponsorships and partners and, you know, advertising and all that sort of stuff, that's going to linger. That doesn't just all come, you know, we don't just flick a switch and it all comes back on when footy does. That is going to take time to recover from. So that might be a 1 to 2 year financial situation for the likes of Fox Sports, Herald Sun, you know, the Addy, you know, the Courier, all these, you know, the Daily Tally, all these big mastheads, all of a sudden don't have the money to be able to pay all their journos and content writers the money that they were on before, because they just haven't been able to acquire it. And it might be 2 years before they're able to get into a financial position where they're able to go from, say, 5 journalists back to 10.
Yeah.
And
question, Paige, did they put everybody off or stand them down?
No, so across the entire Fox Sports, from what I'm made to understand, there was roughly about 200 people across the company. That's we've got multiple different divisions across the country were made redundant. Another 140 approximately were were furloughed until the end of the financial year. So basically, to be determined on next, they could still be made redundant. Lots of people had their hours basically cut in half, so from time down to part-time. I know of plenty of freelancers, contract work that were on part-time. They've all been cut completely. For Fox Footy in particular, we had so many staff that were freelancers and contractors that were based in the broadcast side of things. That obviously are completely out of work because there's no TV to produce, so there's nothing for them to go to. So it's gonna be really strange. I'll be looking to do some freelance work as quick as possible, and with the hope of returning back to being in the media full time. But it's really kind of about doing whatever you possibly can when things do return to normality. Whether that's with Fox Sports, whether that's with somebody else, I'm not sure. But really at the moment, I'm just going to sort of take it every day as it comes, as cliche as that sounds. And hope that there's still a place for me in the media. Yeah, it's a shame though, because we've lost a lot of good women in footy media recently. So,
it's a travesty it's a travesty that some really good journos have been let go, and yet we still have Kane Corns on the bloody TV and on the radio every freaking day. I reckon there's probably 1,000 sports journos in South Australia, or in Australia, I should say, that are more deserving of a spot than he. And Paige, I reckon after talking with you for an hour, you'd definitely be one of them, because it's been such a good on the mic, and your knowledge and your passion about football and sport in general is fantastic. So look, we really appreciate you giving up your time to spend an hour with us, the enemy.
Not at all. I appreciate it all the same.
For those listening, I hope you've appreciated having Paige on. Don't forget to get around her latest release, Alibi, on YouTube, and follow Paige on Twitter as well. There's a bit of gold that comes out there now and again too, Paige, when you can be bothered getting on Twitter.
I've taken a hiatus, but I'm back now. I'm back.
Yeah, so, we all need to take a break from socials now and again.
Can I just echo that, Paige, because it's been a fantastic hour, and you're obviously an incredibly talented person. Obviously, the work that you do, what you were doing for Fox, then also to swing into the music that you're doing, and also, as you say, a multiple premiership player playing football yourself. So, incredibly talented, and it's been a great chat for the last hour.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and good luck with whatever happens in the future, and hopefully you can get back on there.
Look, me too. I really appreciate the opportunity for coming on, guys. Great chat, and hopefully I'll be back on again, and we've got some footy to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, anytime. We've got into all your socials now, Paige, so you won't get rid of us now. We had Angela Pipos on late last year, and she's a great ambassador for women in sports broadcasting and women in sport, and our chat with you tonight has been just as good. So thanks so much, everyone. Don't forget you can catch us tomorrow night, where I'm going to be playing very badly on Evolution 2 on Twitch. The game sucks, but I'm still playing it as we emulate the Crows season while we wait for the real stuff. Thanks to everyone who's participated on chat this evening on YouTube and Facebook and Discord and every bloody where else. Also, thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon as well. You can support us at patreon.com/AFL CrowCast. Lady and gentlemen, I'll bid you farewell. Stay safe, and we'll see you next Tuesday night for Tuesday Night Live.
Cheers, everyone. Bye now.
Thanks, guys. Look after Benny Crocker for me.
Yeah.
Now do. Good night all.
Bye.